The meeting chamber floated high above Prime, a neutral world where 47 alien species gathered each month to discuss galactic security. Commander Harrison sat near the back of the room, watching the various representatives talk among themselves. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few looked like walking plants. Had been Earth's military liaison for 3 years now, and he still found the diversity amazing. Ambassador Lisa sat beside him, reviewing notes on her data pad. She represented Earth's diplomatic interests and trusted her judgment completely. They had worked together long enough to communicate with just a glance. Director entered the chamber, his tall body clicking as he walked. The intelligence chief moved to the center platform where holographic displays waited. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement. "We have interesting footage from human space," announced. The other representatives quieted down, turning their attention to the screens. High Arbiter, an ancient being from the species, leaned forward in his elevated seat. He had lived for 3 centuries and witnessed countless technological developments across the galaxy. "Please proceed, Director." The holographic display activated, showing a massive structure floating near Jupiter. The human orbital testing range appeared on screen, with several old cruiser hulls positioned in a line. A strange device dominated the center of the image, long and cylindrical with massive coils wrapped around its length. "The humans call this a SED." His tone suggested he found the name amusing. Kept his face neutral as the footage began playing. The electromagnetic coils lit up with blue energy, building power for several seconds. Then the weapon fired. A bright flash emerged from the barrel, and a tungsten projectile shot forward at incredible speed. The first cruiser hull simply disappeared. The projectile punched through the thick armor plating like it was paper. The second hull suffered the same fate. The third hull exploded as the slug passed through its old reactor core. The projectile continued into deep space, still traveling at impossible velocity. Laughter filled the chamber. Several representatives actually stood up to get a better view, pointing at the screen with various appendages. "They are throwing metal," a reptilian delegate from the Dominion said between laughs. "We perfected plasma weapons 5,000 years ago, and humans are throwing metal." His mandibles clicked rapidly. "Indeed, our analysis shows this weapon uses electromagnetic acceleration to launch solid projectiles. The energy requirements are enormous for what amounts to, as you say, throwing rocks with extra steps." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Even the usually serious delegates from peaceful species seemed amused by Earth's apparent technological regression. High Arbiter raised one aged hand for silence. "Director, what threat level do you assign to this weapon system?" "Minimal, High Arbiter," replied. "Humanity has been space-capable for only 2 centuries. They lack the refinement that comes with weapons development. Plasma cannons deliver sustained firepower. Particle beams can adjust frequency for different shield types. These are crude by comparison. The energy requirements alone make them impractical," added a delegate from the Scientific Council. "Our simulations show that a ship would need to devote most of its reactor output for a single shot. No vessel can operate effectively under those constraints." Noticed Lisa glance at him. He gave her the smallest smile, barely visible. She understood immediately and looked back at her notes, hiding her own expression. "Commander Harrison," High Arbiter addressed him directly, "does Earth have anything to add regarding this weapon system?" Stood respectfully. "Only that we are still in early testing phases, High Arbiter. We understand our technology is primitive compared to the great species of this council. We continue to learn and improve." Several delegates made sounds that might have been sympathetic murmurs. They seemed to appreciate his humility. "Of course, Commander," said kindly. "Every species must start somewhere. The once used chemical propulsion before we discovered graviton drives. Progress takes time." "Indeed," agreed. "Though I must note that kinetic weapons have not been primary military systems for over 8,000 years. Most species abandoned them once energy weapons proved superior in every measurable way." The meeting moved on to other topics. Trade disputes between border worlds, piracy in the outer sectors, and updates on the ongoing military expansion. The demonstration became a footnote, a momentary amusement in an otherwise routine session. After the meeting ended, gathered his materials slowly. He noticed approaching, the tall looming over him. "Commander Harrison, might I request a small favor?" asked. his translator rendering the clicking sounds into standard galactic speech. "Of course, Director," replied. "Would Earth be willing to share the technical specifications of your project? For our records, of course. We maintain documentation on all weapons systems in Council space." Pretended to consider this, though he had expected the request. "I see no problem with that. We have nothing to hide. I will transmit the data to your office by tomorrow." "Most generous," said, in the tone someone might use when thanking a child for sharing a toy. "Your cooperation is noted." The director walked away, already dismissing the humans from his thoughts. Watched him go, then looked at Lisa. She had stayed nearby, pretending to organize her data pad. "That went exactly as expected," she said quietly once they were alone. "Better, actually," replied. "They are even more dismissive than our analysts predicted." They left the chamber together, walking through the station's curved corridors. Other species passed by, some nodding politely to the human representatives. None showed any concern or wariness. Earth was still the junior member, the newcomers trying to keep up with established galactic civilization. And Lisa reached the human quarters, a modest section of the station where Earth maintained a small staff. Once inside his private office, activated the secure communication system. The encryption was human-designed, not something the Council could easily intercept. He composed a brief message to Earth's strategic command. His fingers moved quickly across the holographic keyboard. "Council review complete. Demonstration achieved desired effect. Intelligence Director requested full technical specifications as predicted. Zero threat assessment confirmed. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 immediately." Paused before sending, reading the message once more. Everything was falling into place. The galaxy's most advanced species had looked at humanity's greatest weapons breakthrough and seen primitive technology. They had laughed at the idea of kinetic weapons in an age of refined energy systems. They had no idea what was coming. Hit send and leaned back in his chair. 3 months of careful preparation had led to this moment. The test footage had been real, but it showed only a fraction of what Earth's could do. The specifications he would send to would be accurate but incomplete, missing the crucial refinements that made the weapons truly devastating. Lisa entered his office carrying 2 cups of coffee, a human drink most aliens found too bitter. She set one on his desk and took a seat across from him. "Do you think they will ever realize we played them?" she asked. Picked up the coffee, enjoying its warmth. "Eventually, but by then it will not matter. Once Phase 2 begins, the galaxy will understand that human ingenuity should never be underestimated." 3 months passed since the Council meeting. The Dominion watched human territory with growing interest. Their military analysts studied the reports about Earth's primitive weapons and weak defenses. They had built their empire through conquest, and they saw opportunity in the mineral-rich asteroid belt near Mars. Commanded the invasion fleet from his flagship, a massive battle cruiser that had broken defensive lines on a dozen worlds. He was confident this would be an easy victory. 30 heavy cruisers and their support ships should overwhelm the small human colonies without difficulty. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. Looked at the holographic display showing human space. The mining colonies were spread across the belt, each one poorly defended. Intelligence reports indicated humans had only a small military presence in the system. This would be over quickly. "Begin the attack," ordered. The fleet entered human space, their ships emerging from jump points near Mars. The massive vessels moved forward in tight formation, plasma batteries charging for the first strike. Expected the humans to surrender or flee. Most species did when faced with overwhelming force. General Brandon Cole received the alert in Earth's military command center. The display showed 30 cruisers moving toward the colonies. His staff moved quickly, coordinating the response. "Third Fleet is ready, General," his communications officer reported. "Launch all ships," Brandon ordered. "Get our people out of those colonies first, then we teach them why attacking humans is a bad idea." Earth's Third Fleet moved from their hiding positions near the moon. 12 destroyers and 6 cruisers accelerated toward the asteroid belt. The human ships were smaller than the vessels, built for speed and maneuverability rather than raw size. Captain Amy Stevens stood on the bridge of the EDF Ranger, one of the new destroyer-class ships. Her crew worked at their stations, preparing for combat. The main system powered up, drawing energy from the ship's fusion cores. "Captain, we have firing solutions on multiple targets," her weapons officer said. "Hold fire until the general gives the word," Amy replied. "Make sure the colonists get clear first." The evacuation ships left the colonies, racing toward the safety of Mars orbit. The fleet continued forward, confident in their advantage. Watched the human military ships approach and almost laughed. 18 ships against 30. The humans were brave but stupid. "All vessels open fire when in range," commanded. The heavy cruisers fired first. Massive plasma lances reached across space, bright beams of superheated matter that could melt through standard ship armor. The human vessels scattered, their smaller size allowing quick direction changes. Several ships took hits, their shields flaring under the energy assault. Kate, communications officer on Brandon's flagship, monitored all channels. She picked up battle communications, their commanders coordinating targeting solutions. They were already discussing which ships to destroy first. "General, last evacuation ship is clear," Kate reported. Brandon leaned forward in his command chair. "All ships, you are weapons-free. Show them what I can really do." Amy's weapons officer began the firing sequence. The Ranger's primary drew power, the electromagnetic coils building to full charge. Around her ship, the rest of the human fleet did the same. Indicators on her display showed green across all systems. "Target acquired, firing," the weapons officer announced. The discharged with a bright flash. A tungsten slug, shaped like a long dart, left the barrel at 4.2% of light speed. The projectile crossed the distance to the nearest cruiser in less than a second. The shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. They had served the Dominion well in countless battles against species using plasma and particle beams. But shields that stopped energy did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten slug hit the cruiser's bow. At such velocity, the projectile did not simply penetrate the armor. It phased through the material, the kinetic energy so enormous that matter could not react fast enough to provide resistance. The slug passed through the entire length of the ship, creating a vacuum tunnel behind it. Everything in the projectile's path simply ceased to exist. Bulkheads, equipment, crew members, all were erased by the passing slug. The vacuum tunnel created catastrophic pressure differences. Internal compartments exploded. The ship's structure buckled and twisted. Then the slug hit the reactor core. The kinetic impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The cruiser broke apart in a brilliant explosion, debris spreading in all directions. Stared at his tactical display. One of his best ships had just disappeared. His sensors barely registered what hit it. The projectile had been too fast, too small for standard tracking systems to follow properly. "What was that?" he demanded. Before his tactical officer could answer, 2 more cruisers vanished from the display. The human ships were firing again, they're releasing more slugs at impossible velocities. Each shot took several seconds to charge, but each shot deleted a vessel from existence. "Evasive maneuvers," shouted. "All ships scatter formation." The fleet tried to disperse, breaking their tight grouping. But changing course took time for such large vessels. The human destroyers kept firing with careful precision. Their targeting computers calculated trajectories that accounted for the movements. Amy watched 3 more enemy ships break apart on her display. This power was beyond anything she had expected during training. The armor, designed to withstand plasma fire and missile impacts, provided no protection against slugs moving at a significant fraction of light speed. "Reload complete, acquiring new target," her weapons officer said. "Fire at will," Amy ordered. Kate intercepted more communications. The enemy commanders were panicking, their organized battle plan falling apart. They called the human weapons void breakers and ship killers. Several captains were requesting permission to retreat. "General, they are breaking formation," Kate reported. "They are trying to flee." Brandon considered his options. The battle had lasted only 15 minutes, but half the fleet was already destroyed or disabled. He could pursue and eliminate them all, but that might create a diplomatic incident with the Council. "All ships pursue but do not fire unless fired upon," Brandon ordered. "Let them run, the message has been delivered." Made the hardest decision of his military career. "All surviving ships retreat to jump points, emergency withdrawal." The remaining cruisers turned and ran. Their powerful engines pushed them away from the human ships as fast as possible. Several fired plasma volleys behind them, hopping to slow any pursuit. The beams dissipated harmlessly in space, the human ships easily avoiding the desperate attacks. Amy stood on her bridge, watching the enemy flee. Her crew remained quiet, processing what they had just witnessed. The Great Dominion, feared across multiple sectors, was running from 18 human ships. "Stand down weapons," Amy ordered. "Good work, everyone. We just made history." Brandon reviewed the battle data from his command center. The engagement had lasted 17 minutes from first shot to enemy retreat. Human casualties were minimal, just some shield damage and minor injuries. They had lost 16 heavy cruisers with all hands. Kate continued monitoring communications, now picking up council channels. The emergency frequencies were lighting up with reports about the battle. Word was spreading fast across the galaxy. "General, the council is requesting immediate contact," Kate said. "Put them through," Brandon replied. High Arbiter appeared on the communication screen. His ancient face showed an expression Brandon had not seen before. It might have been shock. "General Cole, we have received disturbing reports from the Terran Belt. Can you confirm the engagement with forces?" "Confirmed, High Arbiter. They attacked our colonies. We defended ourselves. The fleet has retreated," Brandon said calmly. "Our preliminary reports indicate significant casualties. How many ships did your fleet deploy?" 18, High Arbiter, 12 destroyers and 6 cruisers. Was silent for a long moment. "General, the Council will convene an emergency session. Your presence is requested, along with Commander Harrison and Ambassador." "We will attend, High Arbiter," Brandon agreed. The communication ended. Brandon leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a small smile. The Council had laughed at Human 3 months ago. They had dismissed the weapons as primitive and impractical. Now they would demand explanations. Amy's ship docked at the nearest station for resupply. As she walked through the corridors, other captains approached her. They had all seen the same thing, watched their weapons erase enemy ships with single shots. "Captain Stevens, what do we tell the crew?" one captain asked. "They are asking if all our battles will be like this." Amy considered the question. "Tell them the truth. We have effective weapons, but we still need to be smart. They underestimated us. The next enemy might not make that mistake." Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. The colonies were safe. The invasion had been stopped. Citizens celebrated in the streets, proud of their military success. Harrison received the battle reports in his office on the council station. Everything had gone according to plan, better than anyone had hoped. The galaxy would no longer dismiss humanity as primitive or weak. Lisa entered his office, her expression serious. "The council is in chaos. Half the species are demanding emergency military reviews. The other half wants to know where they can get." "Phase 2 complete," said. "Now comes the interesting part. The galaxy has to decide what to do about us." The emergency council session began with unusual tension. Representatives from all member species filled the chamber, many arriving early to secure the best viewing positions. High Arbiter entered last, his ancient presence commanding immediate silence. "This session addresses the recent conflict in human space," announced. "The Dominion has filed formal complaints. They claim humanity deployed weapons of mass destruction against their fleet." Appeared on the holographic display via remote connection. His injuries from the battle were visible, burns across his scaled face. "The humans used weapons that violate Council warfare conventions. Their projectiles destroyed ships with minimal warning. Our shields provided no defense." Director stood to present his analysis. The intelligence chief looked different now, his confident posture replaced with careful movements. "Our review of battle data shows significant destruction of vessels. However, the weapons used were kinetic accelerators, the same demonstrated 3 months ago. The same primitive throwing devices we dismissed," a delegate said quietly. Raised his hand for order. "We have invited human representatives to explain their weapons technology. Dr. Hayes will present findings." Entered the chamber with steady confidence. She was young for such an important presentation, barely 30 years old. But her credentials were impressive, and she understood the physics better than anyone. She carried a data pad but had memorized her entire presentation. "Thank you, High Arbiter," began. I understand there is confusion about how achieved such devastating results. The answer lies in basic physics that apparently has been overlooked for thousands of years. She activated the holographic display, showing a simple equation. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. This formula has been known since ancient times on dozens of worlds. The key word is squared. When velocity doubles, kinetic energy quadruples. A three-dimensional model appeared, showing a firing sequence. Earth's accelerate projectiles to approximately 4% of light speed. At this velocity, the kinetic energy of a relatively small tungsten slug approaches levels normally associated with antimatter reactions. Professor, the elderly weapons specialist, interrupted. Dr. Hayes, our calculations showed such acceleration would require impossible amounts of energy. How do human ships generate the necessary electromagnetic fields? Nodded, expecting the question. I will address that in a moment, Professor. First, let me explain what happens during impact at these velocities. The hologram showed a slow-motion impact simulation. The tungsten slug approached a ship hull at relativistic speed. When contact occurred, the metal did not bend or shatter. It simply passed through. At 4% light speed, the projectile moves too fast for normal matter interactions, explained. The target material cannot respond quickly enough to provide resistance. Molecular bonds break before they can transfer force. The slug phases through solid matter, leaving a vacuum tunnel behind it. She zoomed in on the simulation, showing the molecular-level destruction. Everything in the projectile's path is effectively erased. The vacuum tunnel creates massive pressure differentials. Ships designed to withstand external pressure cannot handle the internal forces. Structural failure is immediate and catastrophic. The chamber remained silent. Several delegates leaned forward, studying the simulation with new understanding. Park stood to join. She was Earth's lead engineer for weapons systems, the woman who had designed the power distribution networks for ship-mounted. I will address the energy question now. Brought up technical schematics. The breakthrough came from fusion reactor miniaturization. Human ships use compact fusion cores that can produce enormous power in short bursts. We developed superconducting coils that can channel this energy with minimal loss. But the heat generation alone should melt your ships, another delegate protested. It would if we used sustained fire, agreed. Require several seconds to charge between shots. During that time, heat dissipation systems cool the coils. We designed our entire weapon system around burst fire rather than sustained output. Commander Foster, Earth's tactical analyst, stepped forward with more data. The combat philosophy is different from traditional energy weapons. Plasma cannons and particle beams allow continuous fire. Commanders can adjust targeting during engagement, require different thinking. He showed combat footage from the battle, slowed down for analysis. Each shot must count. Our targeting computers calculate trajectories with extreme precision. We account for the target's speed, direction, and probable evasive maneuvers. By the time we fire, the hit is almost guaranteed. The footage showed a cruiser attempting to evade. The slug adjusted its path slightly during flight, using small maneuvering thrusters built into the projectile body. The slug hit exactly where the computer predicted it would. Your projectiles can maneuver? Asked, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Limited correction only, explained. The thrusters provide minor course adjustment. At 4% light speed, even small corrections require enormous force, but it is enough to compensate for target movement during the flight time. Professor stood slowly, his aged body moving with difficulty. I must make an admission to this council. My team analyzed human technology 3 months ago. We dismissed it as impractical because we made incorrect assumptions about human engineering capabilities. He looked directly at the human representatives. We assumed humans would use the same power generation and distribution methods we use. We did not consider that a young species might develop entirely different approaches to the same problems. This was arrogance on our part. High Arbiter nodded slowly. An honest assessment, Professor. The Council owes humanity an apology. We mocked what we did not understand. No apology necessary, High Arbiter, Lisa said, standing to address the assembly. Earth developed because they suited our engineering strengths. We are better at building compact, high-output power systems than at creating sustained energy beams. We worked with our advantages. She paused, making sure every delegate was paying attention. However, the Council should understand something important. This technology is not secret. The physics has been available to every species for thousands of years. What makes our effective is not mysterious science. It is simply the decision to pursue this approach with determination and proper engineering. A representative from the collective, a peaceful species, raised a tentacle. Ambassador, if the technology is so straightforward, does Earth fear other species will build similar weapons? Fear is the wrong word, Lisa replied. We expect other species will develop technology now that its effectiveness has been demonstrated. That is natural and acceptable. What concerns us is the purpose behind such development. She gestured to the battle footage still displayed in the chamber. Earth built for defense. They attacked our colonies. We protected our citizens. We did not pursue the fleet into their territory or demand reparations. We simply stopped the threat. A measured response, observed. The Council notes this restraint. Stepped forward again. I want to address another concern I have heard in private discussions. Some delegates worry that represent a destabilizing weapons breakthrough. They fear an arms race. She changed the display to show comparative data. Are powerful, but they have significant limitations. The charging time between shots creates vulnerability. The projectiles can be tracked and potentially intercepted, though this would require new detection systems. And the energy requirements mean ships must sacrifice other capabilities to mount weapons. In other words, they are not perfect super weapons, said. Exactly, confirmed. They are very effective weapons with specific advantages and disadvantages, just like plasma cannons have advantages and disadvantages, or particle beams, or missile systems. The galaxy is not ending because humans built something new. Added her thoughts. What should concern the Council is not the weapon itself, but the thinking behind it. Humanity looked at 10,000 years of weapons development and asked if there might be a better way. We questioned assumptions. We tried something different. She looked around the chamber. The real question is why no other species did this first. The physics was available. The materials were available. The only missing ingredient was the willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates argued with each other, some agreeing with the human perspective, others still defensive about their own species' approaches. High Arbiter allowed the discussion to continue for several minutes before calling for order. The Council will take these presentations under advisement. I propose we establish a joint research committee to study kinetic weapon applications. Humanity will be invited to participate fully. Earth accepts, Lisa said immediately. Furthermore, continued, the Council formally recognizes humanity's right to self-defense. The attack was unprovoked. Earth's response was proportional. No sanctions will be applied. Began to protest from his remote connection, but cut him off. The Dominion chose to attack a Council member based on faulty intelligence and arrogance. You underestimated your opponent. The consequences are yours to bear. The connection terminated abruptly. Several delegates made sounds of approval. As the session ended, delegates began approaching the human representatives. Some offered congratulations. Others asked technical questions. A few looked uncomfortable, clearly still processing the shift in galactic power dynamics. Professor approached directly. Dr. Hayes, might I request a private discussion? I would like to learn more about your reactor design. Perhaps my team could assist with efficiency improvements. I would welcome that, Professor, replied warmly. Collaboration benefits everyone. Walking back to their quarters, the human team remained quiet until they were in secure areas. Finally allowed himself to smile. That went better than expected, he said. They are scared, observed, but also curious. That is a good combination. They should be both, said. We proved that fresh thinking can overcome established methods. Every species in that chamber is now wondering what else they have overlooked. Lisa looked at the data pad showing messages from various delegations. We have requests for technology sharing from 15 species so far. Most want to develop for defensive purposes. We will share, decided, but with conditions, mutual defense agreements, no aggressive use, and full participation in joint research. Nodded agreement. If we are going to change how the galaxy thinks about weapons development, we might as well do it properly. Outside the window, a vessel jumped away from the station, one of the last ships from their defeated fleet. The crew aboard was returning home to report their failure. The news would spread quickly across space. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never dismiss innovation because it seems to step backward. Sometimes the old methods, refined with new technology and determination, became the most powerful tools of all. 6 months had passed since the defeat. The Galactic Council had entered a new era of cooperation, with human technology being studied and adapted by dozens of species. But a darker threat now demanded everyone's attention. The Void Serpents entered Council space without warning. Their biomechanical ships appeared at the edge of colonized systems, massive constructs that looked like they grew rather than being built. The Serpents had destroyed civilizations for thousands of years, consuming entire star systems before moving on to fresh hunting grounds. Admiral Jake stood in Earth's primary war room, watching reports flood in from the Nexus Point system. 6 inhabited planets, billions of innocent lives, all in the path of the Serpent swarm. "How many ships?" Jake asked his tactical officer. "Latest count is 3,000, Admiral, more arriving every hour. The Council fleet engaged them 4 hours ago." Jake pulled up the battle footage. The Council Defense Force had deployed everything available, over 500 ships representing 20 different species. Their plasma cannons lit up the void, bright beams reaching across space to strike the Serpent vessels. The initial hits were effective. Serpent ships exploded under the concentrated fire, their strange, organic armor burning away under the plasma assault. For the first 30 minutes, the Council forces pushed the swarm back. Then the Serpents adapted. Jake watched as the enemy hulls began changing, developing reflective surfaces that deflected the plasma beams. The biomechanical nature of the Serpents allowed rapid evolution in response to threats. Within 2 hours of engagement, plasma weapons lost 70% effectiveness. "They are learning," Jake said quietly. Envoy Han appeared on the communication screen, his aquatic species features showing obvious stress. Water streamed past his gills as he spoke from his ship's liquid environment. "Admiral, the Council requests Earth's immediate assistance. We are losing badly." Jake studied the tactical display. The Nexus Point stretched across an entire star system, with battle zones scattered over billions of kilometers. The Council fleet was in retreat, their once powerful weapons barely scratching the adapted Serpent hulls. "How many ships can we commit?" Jake asked his staff. 48 equipped vessels are ready for deployment," his logistics officer reported. "But Admiral, that swarm has thousands of ships. Our fleet will be vastly outnumbered." Chief Engineer Greg entered the war room, carrying data pads with technical specifications. He had been working on a classified project for months. "Admiral, I have a proposal. Instead of ship-based, we deploy the orbital platforms." Jake turned to face him. "Those are experimental. They have never been tested in real combat." "They were designed for planetary defense," Greg explained. "Each platform mounts 3 heavy with 10 times the power output of ship-mounted versions. We have 12 platforms ready. If we can move them to Nexus Point, they could change the battle." "Moving them would require our entire heavy transport capacity," Jake said, "and we would be vulnerable during deployment." "Yes, sir," Greg agreed. "But if the Serpents take Nexus Point, billions die. The Council will fall apart. This is the moment to take risks." Jake made his decision quickly. "Prepare the platforms for transport. Alert all equipped ships to form up for departure. We leave in 3 hours." Who specialized in Serpent technology, approached with her own analysis. "Admiral, I studied the battle data. The Serpents adapt to repeated weapon types through pattern recognition, but their evolution takes time, usually several hours to develop effective countermeasures." And Jake prompted, "They have never encountered in combat before. No existing defense patterns in their biological memory. When we hit them, they will have no initial protection. More importantly, our projectiles arrive too fast for adaptive responses. Even if they develop better armor, kinetic impact at relativistic speeds will still be devastating." Jake nodded slowly. "So we hit them hard and fast before they can adapt." "Exactly," confirmed. The transport operation began immediately. The 12 orbital platforms were massive installations, each one over 300 meters long. Disassembling them for transport required precision and speed. Engineers worked around the clock, breaking down the structures into sections that could fit in Earth's heavy cargo haulers. The journey to Nexus Point took 4 days. 4 days of watching the Council casualties mount. 3 planets were already being harvested by Serpent ground forces, their populations evacuated too late. The remaining planets prepared for siege. Kate, now serving as communications coordinator for the entire fleet, monitored all channels. The Council forces were desperate, their confident military machine broken against an enemy that simply would not die. "Admiral, we are receiving constant requests for updates on our arrival time," Kate reported. "Tell them 30 minutes, Jake replied, "and remind them to clear the defensive perimeter. We need room to deploy." The human fleet emerged from jump space at the edge of Nexus Point. Immediately, the sensor displays filled with contacts. The Serpent swarm was even larger than reported, over 4,000 vessels surrounding the 4th planet. "Deploy the platforms," Jake ordered. "Spherical formation around the planet. Ship base take up support positions." The massive cargo haulers moved into position, releasing the orbital platform sections. Teams of construction drones swarmed the pieces, reassembling the installations in space. The operation took 90 minutes, every second feeling like an eternity while the Serpents continued their assault. Captain Amy Stevens commanded one of the destroyer groups providing cover for the deployment. Her ship had been upgraded since the battle, with improved targeting systems and faster charging cycles. "Captain, Serpent ships are moving toward the construction zones," her tactical officer warned. "All destroyers weapons free. Keep them away from the platforms," Amy ordered. Her ships fired, the familiar bright flash followed by devastating impact. A Serpent vessel simply broke apart, its biomechanical structure unable to withstand the kinetic energy. The other destroyers added their fire, creating a protective barrier around the platform assembly areas. The Serpents noticed the new arrivals. Their swarm intelligence analyzed the human ships, comparing them to database entries from previous conflicts. They found matches, primitive kinetic weapons observed during the engagement. The Serpents calculated countermeasures, beginning to develop denser armor plating and more aggressive evasive patterns. "Platforms are operational," Greg reported from the command ship. "All systems show green, targeting solutions locked." Jake looked at the tactical display showing the massive Serpent swarm. This was the moment. "All platforms, fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." 12 orbital platforms discharged simultaneously. The combined electromagnetic pulse briefly created visible distortions in space itself. 36 tungsten slugs, each one twice the size of ship-mounted projectiles, accelerated to 5% of light speed. The effect was catastrophic. The slugs entered the swarm formation and simply kept going, each projectile destroying everything in its path. Serpent ships did not explode or burn. They ceased to exist, deleted from reality by the impossible kinetic energy. Each slug that entered the swarm exited having killed dozens of vessels. The paths created through the formation looked like someone had used an eraser on the tactical display. The Serpent swarm intelligence recognized unprecedented danger. These weapons did not match any known threat pattern. Their adaptive systems had no baseline to work from. More critically, the projectiles arrived too fast for any defensive response. The platforms fired again, and again. The heavies cycled through their capacitor banks, maintaining steady fire. Each discharge required 10 seconds to charge, but the 12 platforms firing in sequence created an almost continuous barrage. Hen watched from his command ship, unable to process what he was seeing. The Serpents had seemed unstoppable, their numbers and adaptation making them nearly invincible. Now they were breaking apart under concentrated human fire. "How is this possible?" his tactical officer asked. "The humans do not play by our rules," Han replied. "They never have." The ship-based added their firepower, 48 destroyers and cruisers targeting the edges of the swarm. The Serpents tried to scatter, their swarm intelligence recognizing the need to disperse. But separating took time for such a large formation. Jake watched the battle unfold with professional focus. "Keep firing. Do not give them time to adapt or regroup." Amy's destroyer moved through the chaos, her crew working with practiced efficiency. The weapons officer called out targets, the helmsman positioned the ship, and the fired with devastating accuracy. They had become very good at this. The Serpents attempted various countermeasures. Some ships moved erratically, hopping to avoid targeting. Others formed groups, using mutual protection. A few even tried ramming human vessels, accepting sacrifice for potential damage. Nothing worked. The projectiles simply did not care about tactics or formation. They traveled too fast to dodge, hit too hard to absorb, and arrived before the Serpents could calculate effective responses. 2 hours into the battle, the swarm broke completely. The remaining Serpent vessels, less than 1,000 now, turned and fled the system. Their swarm intelligence had calculated that continuing the engagement meant total destruction. The Council fleet, which had been holding defensive positions around the remaining planets, could barely believe what they witnessed. The unstoppable Serpents were running away. "All ships cease fire," Jake ordered. "Let them go, we have won." The human fleet held position as the Serpents retreated into deep space. The biomechanical ships jumped away, abandoning their harvesting operations and leaving behind thousands of destroyed vessels. Hen opened a direct channel to Jake. His aquatic features showed something that might have been shock or awe. "Admiral, the Council owes humanity a debt that cannot be measured. You saved billions of lives today." "We did our duty, Envoy," Jake replied. "The Serpents threaten everyone. This was not just about saving Council worlds, it was about protecting all civilized space." Greg reviewed the platform performance data, already planning upgrades. Every system had performed beyond specifications, but he could see room for improvement. Larger capacitors would allow faster firing cycles. Longer barrels would increase velocity even further. Amy docked her ship for resupply, her crew exhausted but proud. They had faced an enemy that destroyed civilizations and sent them running. As she walked through the corridors, other captains approached with congratulations and questions. "Captain Stevens, will all our battles be this one-sided?" a young officer asked. Amy considered her response carefully. "Today we had advantages the Serpents had never seen before. Next time enemies will be prepared. We cannot rely on surprise forever. We need to keep improving, keep training, keep thinking ahead." Back at Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. The Serpents had been defeated. Nexus Point was saved. Humanity's reputation as defenders rather than conquerors was. Harrison stood in his office on the Council station, watching live feeds from the celebration on the rescued planets. Citizens of dozens of species gathered in streets and public spaces, grateful for their lives. Lisa entered, carrying official documents. "The Council wants to award Earth formal recognition as a Tier 1 military power. They also want to establish joint defense protocols and shared technology programs." "That is a significant change," observed. "6 months ago they laughed at us," Lisa said. "Now they want to follow our lead." Nodded. "Let us hope we can guide them well. Power without wisdom leads to disaster. We need to remember that." 3 months had passed since the Nexus Point victory. The Galactic Council prepared for its most significant restructuring in 1,000 years. Representatives from every member species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, filling seats that had once felt too large for such gatherings. High Arbiter stood at the central podium, his ancient presence commanding immediate attention. "This session marks a turning point in galactic history. We gather to formally recognize Earth's contributions to collective security and to establish new frameworks for cooperation." President Tyler Brooks sat in the human delegation section, flanked by Harrison and Lisa. Tyler had been a military officer before entering politics, and he understood both diplomacy and warfare better than most civilian leaders. "The Council grants Earth full Tier 1 military status," announced. "This recognition places humanity among the 5 most capable defensive powers in known space. With this status comes equal voice in security matters and access to all restricted research databases." The chamber filled with sounds of approval from most delegations. A few species showed discomfort, still adjusting to humanity's rapid rise in galactic importance. "However," continued, "this recognition raises important questions about technology distribution and military balance. The Council must address these concerns." Chancellor rose from his seat. He represented a coalition of smaller worlds, species that had survived through diplomacy rather than military strength. "High Arbiter, my coalition formally requests access to technology. Our worlds lack the resources to maintain large military forces. Effective defensive weapons could ensure our survival without requiring massive military expansion. Other delegates voiced agreement. The chamber buzzed with discussions about technology sharing, defense agreements, and the changing nature of galactic power structures. Tyler stood when recognized by. His military bearing was obvious in his posture and direct gaze. Earth understands the concerns raised today. We have never sought to monopolize technology. The physics has been available to all species for. What we developed was engineering application and tactical doctrine. He paused, making sure every delegate was listening. Earth is willing to share both our technology and our knowledge. However, we have conditions that must be met. What conditions? Asked. First, any species receiving technology must commit to mutual defense agreements. These weapons are for protection, not conquest. Second, recipients must agree that the technology will not be used for territorial expansion or unprovoked aggression. Third, all recipients must contribute to a joint research and development program. Tyler gestured to the holographic display showing battle data from both the and Serpent engagements. These weapons change the balance of power in ways we are still understanding. We need collective oversight to ensure they are used responsibly. Nodded slowly. Reasonable conditions. Does the Council accept Earth's proposal? The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a handful of species abstained, mostly those with aggressive expansion policies who realized the conditions would restrict their options. The Joint Defense and Research Program is approved, declared. Earth will provide technical advisors. Other species will contribute their specialized knowledge and resources. Lieutenant Commander Nash reported to the new training facility on the Council station 2 weeks later. He had been chosen to lead the first class of alien officers learning warfare tactics. 20 students from 15 different species waited in the classroom. Welcome to Advanced Kinetic Warfare Training, began. Over the next 6 weeks, you will learn everything we know about combat. Some of you come from species with thousands of years of military tradition. I ask you to set that aside and approach this with fresh thinking. A young officer raised a manipulator appendage. Commander Nash, our species has used plasma weapons for 5,000 years. Why should we abandon proven methods? I am not asking you to abandon anything, replied. I am asking you to add new tools to your arsenal. Plasma weapons are excellent for sustained fire and area denial. Excel at precision strikes and overwhelming single-target damage. Different tools for different situations. He brought up combat footage from the battle. Watch this engagement carefully. Notice how our ships maneuver between shots. The charging cycle creates vulnerability. Good tactics require positioning that maximizes each shot's value while minimizing exposure during recharge. The alien students watched intently as the footage played in slow motion. They saw how human ships calculated trajectories, acquired targets, fired, and immediately repositioned. The rhythm of warfare was completely different from traditional energy weapon tactics. This requires more patience than we are accustomed to, another officer observed. Yes, agreed. Plasma cannons let you spray fire and adjust targeting continuously. Demand precision. Calculate once, fire once, move, miss your shot, and you are vulnerable for several seconds. This is why training is essential. Doctor worked in the research facility orbiting Earth's moon, leading a team of scientists from 20 species. The laboratory represented unprecedented cooperation, bringing together the galaxy's best minds to explore kinetic weapon applications. We have made significant progress on scaling the technology, reported during a team meeting. Smaller variants can be mounted on ground vehicles for anti-armor operations. Larger installations can create defensive networks around entire star systems. A scientist displayed his calculations. We have also identified potential civilian applications. Kinetic launch systems could enable rapid evacuation of endangered populations. The same technology that destroys ships could save millions of lives during natural disasters. That is excellent work, said. This is exactly why collaboration matters. Each species brings different perspectives and needs. Together we develop solutions none of us would find alone. A Meridian researcher working in a water-filled environment chamber asked the question many had been thinking. Doctor, why do you think humanity succeeded where other species did not? We all had access to the same physics. Considered her response carefully. She wanted to be honest without seeming arrogant. I think it comes from Earth's history. Our world has been harsh, forcing rapid adaptation and innovation. We have known war, famine, and struggle. This drove us to constantly seek better solutions. She pulled up historical data showing humanity's technological progression. We went from ground-bound to starfaring in just 2 centuries. Other species took. We did not have time for gradual development. Every problem needed immediate solutions. So desperation breeds innovation, the Meridian said. Sometimes, agreed, but also willingness to challenge assumptions. Your species perfected plasma weapons over thousands of years. They worked well, so why change? Humans looked at energy weapons and asked if there might be completely different approaches. We were not bound by tradition because we had no tradition to be bound by. Back at the council, discussions continued about long-term implications. High Arbiter proposed creation of a unified defense force, combining military assets from multiple species under shared command. The serpent threat remains, reminded the Assembly. We defeated one swarm, but their kind number in the thousands. Other dangers lurk in unexplored space. Separate fleets responding independently will not be enough. Lisa supported the proposal, but added important caveats. Unity for defense is necessary. However, the Council must ensure this force never becomes an instrument of aggression. Strong oversight and clear rules of engagement are essential. The proposal sparked heated debate. Some species worried about surrendering military autonomy. Others embraced the idea of shared security. The discussion continued for weeks, with countless amendments and compromises. Eventually, a framework emerged. The Joint Defense Force would operate under strict civilian oversight. Any offensive action beyond immediate self-defense required Council approval. Member species maintained independent military forces but contributed ships and personnel to the unified command. Earth agreed to provide tactical advisors and advanced weapon systems. Other species contributed their specialized capabilities. The offered graviton drive technology. The Meridian provided advanced sensor networks. The shared intelligence gathering methods. Harrison walked through the Council Station's observation deck, watching construction crews work on a docked destroyer. Human and alien engineers moved together, installing upgraded systems. The cooperation would have been unthinkable a year ago. A Meridian officer approached, her breathing apparatus allowing her to function in the oxygen environment. Commander Harrison, I wanted to thank you personally. My family lives on one of the planets saved at Nexus Point. Without your intervention, they would be dead. Felt uncomfortable with personal gratitude for military action. We did what was necessary, officer. Any species would have done the same. But they did not, she replied gently. The Council fleet tried and failed. Earth succeeded where we could not, that matters. She asked a question that had been on many minds. Did humanity always plan to share this technology? Was that the goal from the beginning? Considered how much to reveal. Honestly, no. We developed because traditional energy weapons did not suit our engineering strengths. Sharing was never part of the initial plan. What changed? We watched the Serpents nearly overrun Council space, explained. We realized isolation was impossible. Threats exist that can overwhelm any single species. Survival requires cooperation, sharing knowledge, building something stronger together. The Meridian nodded understanding. So humans learned the same lesson we did, just faster. Perhaps, agreed. Or perhaps we were forced to learn it because we are still young. Older species had time to develop independence and pride. Humanity knows we are weak alone. We need allies, and allies need us. The final scene of Earth's transformation was visible from orbit. Lights from cities spread across the night side of the planet. Construction platforms surrounded the world, building new ships equipped with the latest designs. But these vessels carried mixed crews now, humans and aliens working side by side. Tyler Brooks gave a speech from Earth that was broadcast across the galaxy. 1 year ago, the Council laughed when we demonstrated technology. They saw primitive weapons from a young species. But we proved that innovation comes from questioning established methods and seeking different solutions. Today, we stand as partners with the great civilizations of the galaxy. Not because we demanded respect, but because we earned it through action. We protected those who needed protection. We shared what we learned. We built bridges instead of walls. The galaxy faces many challenges ahead. The Serpents will return. New threats will emerge from the unknown regions of space, but we will face these challenges together, combining the wisdom of ancient species with the innovation of newer ones. Humanity did not set out to change galactic civilization. We just built a weapon that worked, solved a problem using different thinking. That simple act created ripples that transformed everything. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the simplest ideas, executed with precision and shared with humility. In the research facility, and her team celebrated a breakthrough. They had developed a portable small enough for individual soldiers to carry, yet powerful enough to penetrate heavy armor. The weapon would level the playing field for smaller species facing larger, stronger enemies. "We should share this immediately," a researcher suggested. The peaceful species had always relied on diplomacy because they lacked physical strength for conventional warfare. "Agreed," said. "This changes everything for defensive operations. No species will be helpless against invasion again." Nash watched his first class of students graduate from the training program, 20 officers who now understood tactics and could teach others. They would return to their home worlds and spread the knowledge further. "You have learned quickly," told them. "Remember that warfare is not just about the weapons. It is about thinking differently. Every battle requires fresh approach. Never assume the old methods are the only methods." The students departed with new understanding and confidence. They had come from species with ancient military traditions, but they left with appreciation for innovative thinking. High Arbiter held a private meeting with the human delegation. The ancient looked tired but satisfied. "You have changed us," he said simply. "For 10,000 years, the Council operated according to established patterns. You disrupted everything in just 1 year." "We apologize if we caused difficulties," Lisa began but waved off the concern. "Do not apologize. Disruption was necessary. We had grown complacent, comfortable with our ways. The serpent attack proved this. If you had not arrived with your different thinking, countless billions would be dead." He looked at each of the humans in turn. "The galaxy needed to remember that innovation comes from questioning, not from accepting. You reminded us of this essential truth." Tyler stood to leave, but paused at the door. "High Arbiter, what happens when the next young species joins the Council? Will we welcome their innovations or laugh at them as you once laughed at us?" Smiled, an expression that took centuries to perfect. "That is the real test, is it not? Whether we can learn from our mistakes. Time will tell if this old galaxy can continue to embrace new ideas." The humans departed, returning to their quarters. Lisa and Tyler gathered for a private discussion. "We changed everything," Lisa observed. "The balance of power, the nature of galactic cooperation, even how species think about innovation. And we did it by throwing metal really fast," added with a slight smile. Tyler laughed quietly. "That will be our legacy. The species that looked at 10,000 years of energy weapon refinement and said, what if we just throw metal really, really fast instead?" "It worked," Lisa said. "Yes," Tyler agreed. "It worked better than anyone expected. Now we need to make sure the galaxy uses this power wisely." Outside, the stars continued their endless dance. The galaxy had learned to stop laughing at human ingenuity. They had learned to respect innovation, to question assumptions, and to work together against common threats. Humanities had not just changed warfare. They had changed how an entire galaxy thought about problems and solutions. Sometimes the simplest ideas, executed with precision and power, transformed everything they touched. And the galaxy was better for it. Outside, the stars continued their endless dance. The galaxy had learned another important lesson today. Sometimes the simplest weapons, executed with precision and overwhelming force, could defeat enemies that conventional technology could not touch. And humanity had proven they were very good at finding simple, devastating solutions to complex problems. And humanity had proven they were very good at finding those tools. "They fear us now," Lisa observed. "Fear is a start," replied. "Respect would be better, understanding would be best, but we will take what we can get." Outside, the stars continued their endless dance. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in just 17 minutes. The Dominion would remember this day. More importantly, every other species would remember it too. Humanity had proven that sometimes the simplest weapons, executed with precision and power, could overcome thousands of years of refined technology. The galaxy was learning to stop laughing at human ingenuity. 4. They are going to regret their attack plans, Lisa said. Yes, agreed, a slight smile crossing his face. Yes, they are. Outside the window, the stars glittered in the endless void. Somewhere out there, Earth's shipyards were working at full capacity, installing systems on every new destroyer and cruiser. The galaxy thought humanity was taking a step backward, returning to crude kinetic weapons. Soon they would learn the truth. Sometimes the oldest ideas, refined with new technology and human determination, became the most dangerous weapons of all. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years perfecting energy weapons because they worked well enough. Humanity had decided to do something different, and that difference was about to change everything.